Who the duck is Biohazard Bill? When you work at a clinic, things aren't quite as fancy as they are in the hospital. I've worked at both and things are trimmed down and the budget is lower at the clinics. They have to pinch pennies. But when you work in a free clinic, that's when you really start to see some creative cost-saving maneuvers. The place I worked at was a clinic in a big city and we'd often have lineups out the door, all the way to the street. We'd hustle all day, running around, sweating, just trying to clear that lineup before closing time. All day long we'd be doing everything from removing staples to dressing wounds, cutting off casts and chopping off toes. We chopped off a lot of toes. It's more common than you'd think. And during all of this our biohazard bin would get fuller and fuller. The place couldn't afford to have it emptied out every day, since each pickup cost money. So, by the end of the week, it was stuffed to the brim, overflowing, mostly with toes. But there were other things in there too. Gross, disgusting things you don't want to hear about. We would joke that the weight of it was almost enough to be a whole person sometimes. At the end of a busy week. One day there was an accident at the local nuclear plant. Dozens of workers showed up and had to have various body parts removed that had been affected by some incident that they refused to talk about. I got the feeling the company had paid them off a tidy sum to stay quiet. We hacked off fingers and toes, noses and ears, a whole foot, a hand. The box got so full that day we had to mash it down with a broom just to get it to close. And the smell of it was enough to make a skunk gag. We joked that the crew who picked it up that night would need a forklift, since the red box was so jam-packed and heavy, full of body parts and blood. We tried not to think about the potential radiation exposure. It was just one day, after all. And the box was empty. The strange thing was, they hadn't replaced it with a fresh one. Usually there would be a tidy new box waiting for us, but this time it was the same old blood-soaked one from the night before. Also, a trail of blood and gore that led towards an air vent for some reason. The vent itself was also covered in blood. There were flies starting to buzz around and the room looked like something out of a horror movie. We muttered that Biohazard pickup crew was probably upset about the weight of the box, but that wasn't our fault. It was no excuse not to do their job properly. Still, nobody called the company to complain about it. That day went by as normal. We removed dozens of toes, a few fingers, and did the usual wound care and blood work and everything else. The red box got filled up again and we closed it up and left for the night. The smell was really bad now and we were all looking forward to them getting rid of the old box and bringing in a fresh one. Each day the smell got worse. By Friday, it was a putrescent, noxious cloud of decay that drove people out of the building the moment they walked in. That weekend we all went home and remarked that it would be a relief Monday morning to have a fresh biohazard box and not that smell anymore. But we came in Monday morning and it was the same filthy, bloody, stinky, disgusting red box that had been sitting there for 2 weeks now. Not only that, but someone had written on the wall in blood above the box in giant capital letters, "Thanks for all the fingers and toes and blood and everything. I am making good use of them. Biohazard Bill." He had also drawn a smiley face in blood. On top of that, there was gore, all over the room and once again all over the air vent. We had to shut down for the day to have the place cleaned. And that was where we drew the line. The charge nurse called the company and complained. Tuesday morning I came back in and got the story from her. They told her that the regular pickup crew had come the last 2 weeks and the box had already been emptied. Usually they would at least change out the red box for a fresh one, since we had called in for a pickup, but they had specific instructions from the clinic not to do that unless the box was full to save money. But that still left one very big question mark. Where the hell had all the body parts gone? We couldn't figure it out. Had Biohazard Bill taken them? Some rogue biohazard waste pickup worker who had a sick fetish of some kind? The charge nurse asked this question and the company said it was the same people who always came by, and they hadn't seen any graffiti. Certainly not written out in blood, although they did comment on the bloody trail leading to the air vent. They thought that was a bit weird. That night I went home feeling uneasy and sick to my stomach. I couldn't figure out what the hell was going on at work. Who the duck was Biohazard Bill? And why did he want to take all those body parts? For what sick, demented purpose could he be using them? I was so focused on my thoughts that I almost drove all the way home before realizing I had forgotten to change my shoes. Having only 2 pairs, I really needed them. Since I had a date that night and couldn't go out in my work shoes, they were unclean and not fit for life outside the clinic. I couldn't bear the thought of wearing them outside that place. So I drove back to the clinic to retrieve my shoes. When I got there the sun had set and it was dark outside. I pulled into a parking spot and went up to the door. I unlocked it and went inside, closing it behind me. The clinic was dark and empty. I walked in further, not bothering to turn on the lights. I knew the place like the back of my hand. Besides, There were a few dim lamps lit along the way which provided enough of a glow that I wasn't in complete darkness. Proceeding down the hallway, I went left and up a ramp towards the break room. I grabbed my shoes quickly and began to head back towards the entrance. That was when I heard the sound from the dirty utility room. It was a wet, goopy sound. A slurping, sucking sound. Sloshing, glopping, gloopy thwooks and slurps came from inside the small room. I couldn't help it. My curiosity was overwhelming. What the hell could make such unusual noises? Turning the doorknob. I took a deep breath in and held it, then looked inside. My mind couldn't process what I was seeing at first. It took a few seconds to really take it all in. Inside the biohazard bin was an amorphous blob creature made up of blood, body fluids, severed toes, and fingers. I also noticed the few other odd body parts sprinkled and that we had removed after the nuclear plant accident. The creature was using the dismembered foot to jump around on, and the hand to scoop up more toes from the bin. It was making itself larger, adding more and more body parts to get bigger and bigger. Biohazard Bill, the words escaped my lips before I could stop them. The thing whipped around to look at me and I saw its mouth open up. The teeth were fingers and toes. It looked at me and smiled, then pounced. It was faster than it looked and was quickly to the door where I stood. The only thing that saved me was instinct. As I slammed the door shut just as it ran into it, I heard a loud, wet sound as the thing slammed into the it, and then the sound of 1,000 fingers scratching at the wood, trying to get out. Then it stopped. I heard it moving away from the door, making slushing, slug-like sounds. The air vent. I ran for the door of the clinic, realizing then how the creature had been stowing away these past 2 weeks. The thing had been using its pilfered hand to pry open the air vent and had been hiding in there. Sure enough, I heard the sound of the vent being pried open inside the room, but didn't dare to look back. As I reached the entrance, I looked up and saw another vent, and the dark, shadowy shape getting closer from inside. The creature made of body parts was propelling itself quickly like a snake through the vent, slithering towards me like a massive python. I fumbled with the lock on the door, trying to turn it, my heart pounding in my chest, sweat pouring from my face. I had never felt so terrified in my life. And then steel vent cover slam into the wall on the other side of the hallway. It fell, mangled and dented, to the floor. Biohazard Bill leapt out from the vent, looking hungry. Blood dripped from his toothy maw like drool as his form began to shift. His shape started to morph and change, and suddenly the amorphous pile of fingers and toes and blood began to resemble a dog. A very big, very angry dog. It raced towards me on 4 legs, its toe teeth snapping and snarling bloody spittle as it approached. My fingers felt numb suddenly and I realized I was staring stupidly at the creature when I should have been looking at the lock I was trying to get open. I managed to pry my eyes away from it and turned the lock, hearing the merciful sound of it clicking open. In the reflection of the glass I could see it coming towards me. Close now. I heaved the door open and spun behind it, slamming it shut behind me. Biohazard Bill splattered on impact as he hit the glass door. The clear window of the door now looked like a grisly mosaic, a flattened out 2D version of Biohazard Bill. Fingers and toes everywhere embedded in a layer of dark red blood and body fluids. The vague shape of a face, looking out, still smiling. But then the blood and body parts began to drip and drop and fall back down to the floor. And they somehow started to coagulate back together, assimilating back into a ball that grew and took shape before my eyes. Like the T-1000, the damn thing was unstoppable. I realized it would regroup and hide back in the air vents. The thing would not be satisfied with just the snacks in the biohazard bin either. Biohazard Bill was getting hungrier by the day.